G'day. Onto our legs and rails for this video, and to start with, what I've done is I've gone and cut an angle on just a scrap piece of timber because it's important that I've got something that I can repeat to measure the angle on my sliding bevel. Alright, that's locking in there like that. Alternatively, you can just grab a protractor, mark out that 15-degree angle, and go and keep that somewhere safe so that you can use it again. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if your 15 degrees turns out to be 14 or 16 degrees, just as long as it's something that you can keep repeating and keep them consistent. So to start with, we're going to take one of our pieces of 400 by 42 by 19, and we're going to make that angle, that 15-degree angle, on each end. Okay. Importantly, guys, you need to make sure that the long part of your material ends up being 400 mil. So you're going to have two angled pieces cut like this. Okay. So one side is going to be short and one side's going to be long, and it needs to be the long side that's 400. All right. Having marked that 15 degrees on that flat, wide 42mm surface, I'm then going to also use a tri-square to square down the edge, alright? And that's just going to keep things a little bit more accurate when I go to cut it. Okay, so we've got those ones marked out now. It's always a good idea to mark your waste material with some hatching or some X's. Alright, and then setting yourself up in a bench hook. Okay, and we're going to trim those bits off, leaving a little bit of line remaining so that we can clean it up nice and neat on the disc sander. Okay, now I've got those angles cut on both ends of my rail. I can go and repeat that process on my second rail, and then I'm going to go and clean them up on the disc sander. Alright, for sanding back using the disc sander, you've got a couple of options. You can use this guide to help you. I'd recommend it if you're not confident with your ability to hold the material at a nice firm angle, the correct angle. So that's available for you, and there's some markings on there to indicate the angle that you can use. What I've actually done though is I've kind of ignored the angles that are marked on there, and I've gone and used that same piece of material that I used before to mark my set the angle on my sliding bevel. And I've gone and put that one on here and set my angle with that in mind. Okay. Now what I can go and do, we're only just trying to remove a very small amount of material just to make it nice and flush, and we can do that on both ends. With any luck, your rail piece should now be 400mm at the long edge, and I've already measured mine and mine's spot on. So I'll just need to go and do that for my second rail now, but I'm going to move on and show you a little bit about starting out with the legs. So with our legs, we are going to start with cutting the rebate joint. Okay, so we need to start by marking out the rebate. Now, when you look at the plans, you'll see that the legs are only 300mm long, I believe. But I don't want you to cut the length of the leg yet. All right, I want you to start out with the rebate at the top end, because if you make a mistake on that, you can always trim some of that off and steal a little bit of that extra waste material from the bottom of the leg. Okay. Now, what we're going to do to start with is using that sliding bevel with the angle already set. I'm going to mark a 15-degree angle at the top. Now, before I go and measure my next angle, I want you to look really closely at the plans. You'll see that the plans show that the rebate is going to be 42 millimeters wide. All right. Now, this is actually going to be an adjacent measurement. All right. So have a think about what adjacent means. All right. And there we go. 42 millimeters like that there. And I'm going to make a mark. If you just run your rule down the edge of the material, you're going to find that the marking is a little bit out. Okay, so I've got that adjacent measurement. I'm going to then use my sliding bevel again to mark out the depth or width of my rebate. And then I can use my tri-square to mark out along the other edges. Be really careful to make sure your lines all match up nice and neatly. Alrighty, so it looks like that now. Hopefully you can see my pencil markings nice and clearly. Alright, and I've gone and got a marking gauge which I've already set at 9.5 millimeters, and I'm going to scribe a line along these edges to show the depth of my rebate. Alright, and I'm going to mark out my waste material with some crosses, just like I did before. Now, the next thing you're going to do is trim off, just like you did with the rail, you're going to trim off that end a little bit at 15 degrees. I would then go and trim that up on the disc sander nice and neatly as well. And then we'll get into chiseling out the rebate. The first start of chiseling out the rebate is going to be to cut down and stop halfway through the material in that shoulder of the rebate. Okay, I've just cut through the shoulder of my rebate, going across the grain at that 15-degree angle. My cut isn't perfect, but I'm going to be able to clean that up with the chisel. Now, what I think is probably an easier alternative for you here, rather than trying to chisel out all of that material, I think you're probably better off setting this up in the vise. I would recommend trying to get your angle as horizontal as possible. Okay, and we can go and use our tenon saw to cut off the majority of the material in that rebate, just so that we reduce the amount that we need to chisel. Alright, there we have that waste material cut out, which gives us significantly less material here to have to chisel out afterwards. Now I'm going to move on cleaning that rebate joint out with my chisel. Be sure to check out my chiseling video for some tricks and tips into chiseling specifically. Okay, now that I've chopped that out, oh, by the way, you might notice that I used a clamp here to hold my material in place. It just makes it a little bit easier so it doesn't slip around. Now that I've chopped that out into the internal corner, I'm going to be able to do some pairing to take out the rest of the material. I'm going to do that one in the vise. Now probably the most important part of the rebate joint is that internal shoulder. So you're going to, as you're paring that out and cleaning that out, you're going to find that you're accumulating a lot of sort of waste material right in that internal corner. What I do is I hold the flat blade of the chisel against that internal shoulder, and I just use the sharp blade as kind of like a knife to slice out that waste material. You've just got to be careful that you don't let the chisel follow the grain too closely. The grain might be going all over the place and it might encourage the chisel to dig in a little bit where you don't want, so just be mindful of that. Okay, I'd also encourage you to make sure that you don't blow through to the other side and rip out a chunk. So I always try to go just to halfway and then I flip it around and chisel from the other side too. Okay, I think I've got that one done. That was a little bit tricky going on that side of the material. I think the grain direction made it a little bit more difficult. So inside that rebate, there's a little bit of a chunk that's been taken out, but it's not going to affect the joint and you're not going to see it at all. From there, we're going to get on and we're going to show you how to mark out the taper for the leg and make sure that we've got the length of the leg right. Before you do that, I'd encourage you to get all your legs to this point, but just make sure you're looking at the plans. Remember that you need 2 legs that are going to be right legs and 2 legs that are going to be left legs, okay? I'm going to get on and get all my other pieces sorted, and then I'll be able to get back and show you the next little step with marking these out. G'day guys, I'm back. Sorry, I just had to go and change my shirt. Alright, so I'm going to get on and keep marking out for the legs now, and what I've got is the rebate that I've already cut, and I'm going to put that down on the bench, flat side down, and use the back side that is uninterrupted without the rebate. Now going from the long side, so think about you've got your angle like this, so we're going from the long side. What I'm going to do is get my rule and I'm going to measure down 300 millimeters, which is what it says on our plan. All right, I have my, what do you call this thing? Sliding bevel. And that's got that angle set that we've been using already, about 15 degrees. And I'm going to set that up on my material where I've marked the 300 millimeters. Make sure it's going in the same direction as the angle at the top. And I'm going to mark across at my mark. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a little bit more, 10 millimeters or so, and make another mark because I want to just leave myself a little bit of a margin for error in case I stuff something up a little bit later. Now if you think you're awesome and you don't need that little Gumby margin, by all means don't include it, but I think it's a good little tip to put that in. Just in case, because you're never quite sure if you're going to need that afterwards. All right, in looking at our plan, you can see that we have got a measurement that's halfway across the width of our material. All right, so I'm going to put a mark halfway across the width of my material, and then I'm going to draw a tapered line that goes from my long edge to that mark, and I'm actually going to blow that right through. From there, what I'm going to be able to do is bandsaw off all of that extra material that I don't need, and keeping my line well and truly on, I'll then be able to use a plane to plane back nice and smooth to the line. Alrighty, why don't you come over with me and we'll get this cut on the bandsaw. Oh, you beat me to it. Alright, so I've got my leg material and you can see, hopefully, that I have marked out some crosses to indicate the waist because I want to make sure that I do cut on the waist side of the line. Now here at the bandsaw, I've got my push stick because I don't want to lose my fingers. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that off. Really make sure that you cut on the waist side of the line. Don't cut on the line, all right, because we want to be able to plane that back. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the angle off there so I can get rid of that end bit. Remember that I added a little bit extra just as a bit of a Gumby margin in case I make some mistakes later on. Okay, so the first thing, cut that length off, and then I'm going to cut my taper, and then I can get back and do some planing. Whew, tiring work that. I think I've done a good job though. Okay, and I'm back. So the last little step to our legs is to grab your plane and plane that back to your line. Okay, make sure that you've got markings on both sides so that you don't go past your line on one side. And I've already put this in the vise. Good little tip, a little bit like with the chiseling, make sure your plane is on a slight angle. Also be aware it will probably plane a little bit better in one direction compared to the other. So just be conscious and mindful that you're watching out or feeling for that. Whew, things got cold all of a sudden. Alright, so hopefully you've now got your rail cut like this, and you've got your legs with the rebate cut and the taper cut as well. Now I want you to take a look at what I've done here, and you can see that I've left the leg a little bit long because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a little bit of trouble getting the legs exactly right. When you've got 4 legs, it's really, really difficult to get all 4 legs sitting truly flat. If you've only got 3 legs, it's much easier because you've only got 3 points of contact, okay? So there's my little tip. Give yourself that extra little bit of room, and then it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to trim things around when you go to assemble it. Now, basically, I'm not going to take you through the assembly here, but basically we're going to be assembling the leg onto the rail just like that. All right, and before you do that, I want you to really critically look at the joint when it's sort of positioned together. So I've got 2 legs here and my rail, and I can see that on this leg, if I just sort of squeeze it together and try to show you, you can see that that's not too bad. It probably is a little bit more of a gap than I'd like it to be, but it's not too bad. Okay, I think that'll clamp together and glue together quite nicely. And if I look on this side here, you can see that that joint is really pretty good. In comparison, now I've only just sort of put these together to have a look at now. But in comparison, if I show you the other one, you can see that that one there has got a bit more of a gap in it. And on that back side, let me see if I can hold it for you. You can see that we've got a bit of a gap happening there too. So this leg here, I'm probably going to just do a little bit more work on to get it quite right. I'm going to fix that up, and then I'll probably do another video for you just showing you how to go about assembling it all. Essentially, first of all, I'm going to assemble 2 legs onto one rail. Do that for both sides. Make sure they're glued nice and tightly. And another good tip there would be maybe use an internal angle just to make sure that your leg does glue to your rail at the right angle. All right. Then we're going to drill some holes, fit them to our carcass, and probably the other thing that I need to do that I haven't gone through with you yet is putting a quarter round on each of the edges of our carcass. Okay. But I might even just not show you that, and I'll show you the end result when I go to assemble it all. All right. Hope that one helps. Bit of a long video for you, I know, I'm sorry, but I think we went through everything fairly thoroughly. Good luck, guys.